Hello, everyone. We had a great presentation from Aurore Stéphane, who gave us a quite powerful wake-up call about the limit of our digital world and how especially the minerals and the metals will play a key part in our non-renewable resources. And now the question is, how does this information and many others get incorporated into the ICT sustainability worldwide? And it's a bit crazy because I expect to do just a rapid tour of the entire world, and I would say a rapid tour of quite a lot of the tools. So it's a bit crazy, so buckle up. Let's go for the state of ICT sustainability 2023. So, I'm not a die-hard agilist, but I do love many of their tools, and one of them is a stable retrospective. So let's discuss a bit where we're going, what is the wind, or what are the winds actually, because there are several of them, pouring our sails, which will be the third topic. What are the anchors we face when we do IT sustainability or tech sustainability worldwide, and what are the pitfalls or icebergs that we might have ahead of us? And talking about destination, I have to mention where I live, obviously. Hey, Rainier Island, this is kind of a dream destination, but this is not where we want to go. Where we want to go when it comes to IT sustainability is there. And this is a clearer vision that has been built over years. And I think it's now more commonly shared among, well, actually people in this room, but not the general public yet. And what is this all about? It's about electricity not being everything. Actually, it's just the very entry point of every environmental impact study. And Julia Meyer for ADEME will provide a great example in a study later in the afternoon. Now, there is another point as well, which is sustainability is a journey, not a destination. And all these claims like I'm carbon neutral, I will offset everything and then business will go on as usual. Well, it doesn't really work like this. And this is also this kind of change of perspective that Tristan Nito will highlight in his talk about the end of Moore's law and the way we should rethink a bit our relationship to technology. And maybe what is the most important, I would say, common understanding now when it comes to tech sustainability is that it is complex. Not necessarily all the time complicated, but complex. And by complex, it means that you've got side effects, you've got rebound effects. You cannot really rely on silo thinking. And I think both Perrine, Tanguy talk about how you want to run a sustainable e-commerce with a lot of side effects, a lot of things to take into consideration that are interconnected. And also what Theos Alves da Costa has to say about responsible AI, that it's not all white, it's not all black, it's complex. They will both illustrate what is the complexity in tech sustainability. Now, what are the winds of change? Well, to be honest, it used to be like this in 2022, mostly driven by employees. A lot of us, we've seen several studies, just name one among many others, like this North American study saying that half of US and Canadian workers face that a misalignment between their values and their companies wants would actually make them quit. So that was kind of the main drivers, your employees pushing you to be more sustainable, especially with the big tension in the workforce. And you also might have bumped into studies like the IBM one in 2023 saying that half of consumers said they've already paid a premium, on average 59% more, for products branded as sustainable or socially responsible in the last 12 months. Still, I think a massive change has occurred. And today, the strongest win for technologists like us, responsible technologists like us, is regulation and somehow investors' pressure. And if you deep dive a bit on where does this pressure come from? It's actually three big buckets. The first one is the circular economy, the right to repair, tackling both the e-waste problem and the resource exhaustion one, like Aurore Stéphane mentioned. You've got a law in Singapore, you've got the compulsory USB-C charger in the European Union, you've got New York State right to repair law, you've got European Parliament, which might ban soon welded batteries, etc., etc. So big push forward a more circular economy and being way more cautious about the resource exhaustion. The second bucket is around data center and more specifically around energy efficiency. The latest European Union Energy Efficiency Directive has more than 30 references to data center with introduction of mandatory waste heat use, etc., etc. But we've also seen decision to pause data center deployments here and there over water and energy overuse concerns in Singapore, in the Netherlands, in Ireland. And the third big bucket, maybe the one that has been covered the most in media, is everything related to sustainability reporting, especially carbon accounting and carbon footprint reduction, the Paris Agreement trajectory. I think, well, the rock star here is obviously the European Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence with its mandatory Scope 3. But there is also the new version of the GHG protocol. There is ISSB pushing for stricter standards. You have new law in China as well, collecting more and more Scope 3 reporting from a Chinese listed or big enough company. I'm not an expert in Chinese law, so I will not elaborate, but this is not something that is just Western to be seen with a Westernward perspective. And what is very important here is for company not based in the European Union, it is very important not to get mistaken. Make no mistake, global enterprise required to report will use these reporting structures, and I bet quite a lot on the CSRD becoming the de facto reporting law. This is something that has been called the long arm of the European Union law by Donald Eubank, and this is exactly what happened with privacy laws and GDPR. So what are the takeaways as a technologist? First of all, if you operate a data center, the red carpet time are getting over, especially in Europe. You will have to justify way more the way you use the resources and what is your true added value for the local communities, especially. The second one is if you design for end user devices, get ready for a longer tail of equipment and operating system to be compatible with. Being required to test for devices having 6, 7, maybe 8 years old. And then maybe the most important part is understand what carbon accounting truly means for your budget. And if you don't make it operational, the only way will be to reduce your budget. But that's something that I'm going to elaborate a bit. Understanding the equation. So what is it all about? If you don't let's go back. A carbon audit has 3 buckets. The greenhouse gases that you actively directly emits, mostly from manufacturers or the transport sectors, but in your company will be mostly the oil used in the cars you own directly, if any, for instance, or if you run a data center, the backup generator. Then the GHG emitted by the energy you consume, which is mostly your electricity bill and your district heating bill. And the rest is embedded carbon of all the services and products you buy. And more the use your clients make of your products as well as the use the bank make of your money, but that's a different story. In almost all companies, Scope 3 is the majority of greenhouse gas emissions. In tech companies, which is where most of us work, it's actually usually above 80% despite the electricity consumption of their data centers. So now here is the catch. By default, we measure the Scope 3 emissions by taking the money a company spends or a department, and we multiply it by the emission factors of its line of product adjusted for its location. Now, do you see the issue? Yeah. When CSR or carbon auditor folks will come back to us in a couple of years asking how we align with Paris Agreement, which is for the tech sector minus 50% reduction in 50% reduction in emissions by 2050, and knowing that many tech companies have pledged to achieve it by 2040, if not sometimes even before, like 2030. Well, if you don't have operationalized your carbon, it will be a matter of budget. The budget, your spendings will be the only variable to be moved. So this is why operationalizing your carbon is you being on the right side of the equation. It requires to start monitoring your suppliers, monitoring your emissions from your cloud provider, for instance, to make sure that you have a way more interesting story to tell to your boss and to your employees, which is, hey, we're going to reduce CO2, not necessarily the euro we spend. So that was about understanding the wins, and there are powerful wins. But what about the sales? So the good news is, well, you'll never walk alone, if I can borrow the slogan. There are more and more communities in ICT sustainability. I'm 100% sure I couldn't manage to list all of them here at the moment. What would be the three takeaway here? First of all, it still remains a European momentum. As far as I've been able to list initiative, and by initiative, I'm mostly talking about non-governmental organization, more than 3/4 of them are European-based. I might be biased. I really try to get associations and NGO from other continents, but it's not that easy. There is obviously La Web Verde in South America, but not that many. And most of the others are pretty big American, I would say, transnational NGO. There are quite a lot of initiatives, and this is why we will have a very interesting discussion with the roundtable with 8 NGO talking about norms, because there are quite a lot of NGO focusing on norms at the moment, and very few powered by individual. It's mostly an organization's topic. And with the Linux Foundation having somewhat weird positioning, because the governance is made by organization, but the contribution is mostly done by individuals. Now, this is about the community, but what about, and this is very important, to be part of a community, because it is such a rapidly evolving field that it's almost impossible to keep track on everything which is going on by our own. Now, what about the tools? So this is a new project that I'm running with my buddy, Benoit Petit. Big kudo to him. I'm pretty sure, but I don't want to oversell that it will be hosted by the Boa Vista Association soon. And here is what I've been able to list with Benoit as dedicated tools when it comes to IT sustainability. And you can see that, and don't get me wrong, it's still work in progress. That's very important for you to remember that. And another disclaimer, I did look for carbon calculator in a big Asian cloud provider, and I couldn't find any for Alibaba Cloud and others. So what are the main takeaways? Well, the website carbon calculator place starts to look crowded. Somehow we've got a bit of a sub-market here. So, until now, it has still failed so far to reach a consensus on both methodology and metrics. So be very aware when you use it that it's mostly for awareness and tendency, but it's not absolute numbers that you should report, for instance. The other takeaway is CCF and other live calculator tools. And by live, I mean tools that are able to provide you within a day some information on your carbon. They remain pivotal if you want to operate your carbon footprint reduction and not only report it, because this is what the 3 main cloud providers will allow you to do. The most successful are still displaying numbers on a monthly basis. On these cloud dashboards, we will have the chance to have Vincent Poncet from Google Cloud telling us more about the latest developments, both sustainability of the cloud and sustainability in the cloud. The third and maybe the most important takeaway, I should have put it first, it's still a word of carbon. We are still mostly talking about greenhouse gas emissions, and we now all know that it's not the end of the story, but the beginning of the story when it comes to environmental impacts with waters, material exhaustion, ADP. for those who are a bit more familiar with the word, also should play a big part. What I've also noticed so far is that it is not very often the case that there is a clear link between the models being used and scientific literature. So that's really something that I will encourage providers to do. Say, this is the model, and the model refers to this scientific paper, peer-reviewed, published paper that states that this is how we should assess carbon or things like that. And talking about assessment, there is two clarification in the wording that we really need to pay attention. Some of these tools are more about measurement. Some of these tools are more about assessment of best practices. So that's takeaway, I would say, number one. But the second is, what are we talking about when we talk about measuring? And most of the time, it's not measurement. It's more modelization and estimation. So I think it will be best to make sure that we don't use the word measure when it's not actually something we measure. And most of the time we don't measure, we estimate. And, that's good enough. We can operate a lot while estimating. Now, what are the anchors? Well, we do have a data problem. Let's be honest, with four main issues. The first one is a lack of transparency from many actors. A second is a lack of consistency across data sets. The third one is a lack of coherency over time. And the fourth, and maybe the worst one, is a lack of commonly agreed definition sometimes. A famous software as a service CRM solution has its own definition of net zero based on effort rather than results. A bit surprising. The only three things that we can do about it are apply good data governance to our own sustainability data. I want to pen the data gov topic here and data governance topic, be reassured, but just treat your sustainability data asset as you treat your financial data assets. They will be more and more the same, to be honest. And the second one is choose, contribute, and promote open source. Ban, when possible, suppliers not using open source and open data sources, and use norms as much as we can. And talking about norms, this is our second main anchor. We have a norms momentum, but we still have a norm issue that without truly commonly agreed norms when it comes to tech sustainability. So quite a lot of initiatives, and this is what we will be talking this afternoon with the roundtable, with us 8 NGOs, some of them deeply specialized in norm settings. Now, what are the icebergs in front of us? Well, I love to borrow these visuals from Bon Pot, an online media managed by Thomas Wagner, kudos to him, about the discourses of climate delay. And that applies very well to us. In a nutshell, we are never short of good excuses not to do things. You can play a lot with it. And overall, today in IT sustainability, but not everywhere in IT, I truly believe that the icebergs ahead of us are mostly all the excuses we could find not to move. I'm sure you can spot some discussion you had with colleagues, with boss, with suppliers, etc., etc. Now, having today in this room hundreds of technologists shows that most of these icebergs are getting overcome by more and more responsible technologists. So thanks a lot for being there. That's a very positive signal. Enjoy the conference and see you a bit later